Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Smart Tank Revolution, where we always kick out at 2. I am your host today, the Machiavellian, all-knowing, all-seeing, all-wonderful, but not Donnie Wonderful, Joey Business. So, welcome back. This is another edition of our The Essentials, where we rank wrestlers from past, present, and all in between. So we visit yesteryear and sometimes we stay in the contemporary. But today on 422, it's close enough to Earth Day that I figured my spotlight would be on Mr. 420 himself, Rob Van Dam. And yes, I did do the thumb point to my shoulder because you can't say his name without doing it. So where my co-host went left and decided to choose WCW, breaking that cherry, going outside of the vein of the contemporary WWE, AEW currency, I'm going to go just a little bit right of that and pick ECW. And I struggled with who I could pick from ECW that would really round out and make quite an interesting, dissection here. But I settled on good old RVD, and I think it's a good choice, and I'm going to explain why. So here we base our critiques and our synopsis on all these wrestlers and their work and their body of work and their careers off of two different types of rating scales. One, we have Bret Hart's rating scale from his book, which is titled My Real Life in the Cartoon World of Wrestling. I can never seem to remember that title without looking at it. And we base it off his attributes on a 1 to 10 scale. There's 3 categories and 1 to 10 on all 3. 10 being the best, 1 being the worst, so forth. Then we go to the Smart Tank Revolution's unique rating system, which is called the Essentials. So we have 3 categories as well, but it works on a 1 to 5 standard. Same, 1 being the worst, 5 being the best. So we always start with Bret's because, come on, he is one of the greatest of all time. I can take a knee to that and bend. So let's start with one of my favorites always, because it's the one that makes me chuckle, especially when we listen to these back, because we do listen to our own stuff. Sometimes we like the sound of our own voice. I know I do. So wrestlers' work scored from a 1 to 10, their physique, their appearance, and their presentation. Basically, what do you see when you first see these guys walk through the curtain for the very first time, or on your TV screen, or on YouTube, or on anywhere that you see them, wherever you're introduced? How do they make you feel? When you first glance, if you knew nothing about them, if you didn't read the dirt sheets, if you didn't follow them through the indies, or know them in high school, what do you think? Okay, here we go. Rob Van Dam. He wrestles in a singlet, really colorful, tattoo style, usually like a dragon on it with a yin and a yang. Very cool. What do I see? I see Jean-Claude friggin' Van Damme. They could be brothers, even though Rob Zukowski is not related to Van Damme. I find it very hard to believe that somewhere someone doesn't have explaining to do, because it's just an uncanny resemblance. So yeah, I'm a fan of Van Damme from the 80s, the 90s, Bloodsport, whatnot. Do I see him as a professional wrestler? When I think wrestler, you think of the giants, Hogan, the Goldbergs, like all those types of physiques, the Gorgeous George, the bigger guys, Triple H. When I look at Rob Van Dam, I see a very athletic man. I see a very cool, chillaxed dude, which is what you're supposed to see. But I buy him as a professional wrestler. I would buy him as what he was. He was essentially the mid-card wrestler. He wasn't the top tier until the promotion really took off, and it did kind of shoulder on RVD. But at first look, I definitely buy him as a wrestler. Of course, especially being more versed now from that cartoon 80s era, that wrestlers like Shawn Michaels and AJ Styles and all those are the norm now. I totally buy him as a wrestler. And since I was introduced to him while I was very, very heavy into wrestling and its history going through the stuff in the late '90s. Yeah, he definitely has a wrestler's look. But what would I score it? Like if I saw him on the street, I give him a 7. I give him a 7. He was in fantastic shape. He definitely cut and big guy for his size because he wasn't a tall guy. But it just didn't scream professional wrestler to me. More of maybe a movie star, probably because he looks like a particular movie star. But yeah, a 7 I think is fair. Presentation, really cool. I mean, he had pretty neat music. In all his iterations. His singlets are always cool because they had like the custom singlet. Sorry for the noise in the background. Apparently, there's a disturbance somewhere. Better call the Ghostbusters. Yeah, he had the cockiness and the swagger walking to the ring. Before that was more of a normal thing. He just exuded that confidence, which I always thought was neat. So I give him a 7 in that category. I think that's fair. Now here's where we're going to get a little bit dicey. And again, I might be a little bit more harsh, and it's funny because listening back to Donnie's stuff, he's a little bit more gracious with some of these rankings than I am. But, when it comes to being a prisoner of the moment in captivity while I'm watching this stuff, my rankings for the matches tend to be way more gracious than him. So we balance each other out. But the next one's promo ability. Scored from a 1 to 10. This is where Rob just didn't, outside of that laid back, cool California, like, hey man, whatever, let's go, let's do this thing. He really didn't have a promo set, especially in ECW. I was never enamored with his promos. He did his talking with his legs, with his feet and his hands. That was like what he did. I mean, if you could score it on feet and hands doing the promo for you, he's a 10. His promo is probably going to be the lowest that I can give, that I've given so far. I would give RVD's promo ability, I'd give it a 4. It's under average. It's under the halfway. He's not even batting 5,000. I mean, 5,000. Wow. He's not even batting 500. He's a 4 because he's not menacing. There's no menace to him. Like he's not going to grab the mic and like explode on you. And if he does, it's almost laughable. So there's no menace, and I think that's part of the charm is the underestimation that you could play up storyline wise of all his opponents. I give him a 4, a flat 4, and I'm not going to change that. I feel comfortable in that. There's no memorable promos or anything like that, so I mean we might be getting a little bit ahead of ourselves, but he gets a 4, so this is short work on that. Here we go. Now we're getting some meat and potatoes here. In-ring work. Sorry. Scored from a 1 to 10 again. The ability to perform and execute a variety of wrestling moves, blah, blah, blah. How you wrestle. What do you look like between the ropes? That's essentially what we're talking about. Okay, scored from a 1 to 10. His in-ring work, 10. Absolute 10. Across the board. I said he does his talking with his hands and feet. JR used to say with X-Pac, those educated feet. Yeah, no. Then Rob Van Dam's was doctorates on his feet because he was so skilled with his striking. His striking looked good. It was very fluid. But let's just get to the in-ring work. His in-ring work, unbelievable. He was able to work with a myriad of opponents, any size, any shape. Any skill set, and make it come off great. His matches, it might be getting a little ahead of ourselves, but with Jerry Lynn, it was like what I would refer to as mirror, mirror. And it was the first time I ever saw that type of style. I never saw that counter for counter for counter for counter for counter for counter that seemed to go on the entire match until I watched a Rob Van Dam and Jerry Lynn match. And it was like a whole new world opened up to me. And that was kind of what, when I started watching indie wrestling and becoming more versed and ingrained in indie wrestling through friends and, talents, I was more open to it because of these RVD, Jerry Lynn, clinics that I had been privy to and I've seen. So yeah, his in-ring work is a straight 10. It's just unreal. I don't want to use the term phenomenal because it's, you know, coined by AJ Styles, and it's kind of overused at this point. But yeah, he was kind of the AJ Styles before AJ Styles. I mean, he was doing stuff in the ring that you had never seen before. He was doing unbelievable flips and counters and, the 5-star frog splash. Yes, Eddie Guerrero's was a thing of beauty, but Rob Van Dam made it something spectacular. The 5-star frog splash, the hang time he would get on that thing. I mean, now Montez Ford kind of, I would wonder in their heyday, like who would get higher, but it's just something unbelievable, like the air and the beauty he would fall with it. And the one thing I always loved about Rob Van Dam's landing of the frog splash, it was a sell along it, because you're jumping up in the air and coming down with your own body weight and your own chest onto somebody and slapping them, right? Meat to meat, right? It's going to hurt. You're sacrifice. It's kind of a kamikaze play. You're jumping to sacrifice some pain on yourself to inflict more pain on your opponent. And it always came off that way. And the way he did it was just gorgeous, because he'd land, he'd bounce, he'd sell, he'd kick his legs, hold his stomach, and then scramble over for the cover, and which was always dramatic. So it just so many things. The Van Daminator, way before Shane McMahon did it. Kicking the chairs into the face, being extremely innovative and versatile. And, he was Mr. Monday Night at that point. Well, no, I'm sorry. Yeah, he was the whole effing show. That was his first moniker. And he was unbelievable. He was the guy that put the asses in the seats. Once ECW's word of mouth got around, sure, there was so much other stuff. There was the Dudleys, there was Sabu, there was Taz, who's one of my all-time favorites. We'll get to him eventually. But I wanted to break it with Rob Van Dam for the ECW cherry. Yeah, he was that guy that, you went and watched a spectacle. It was a feast for your eyes. The storylines were not always good, but they weren't designed to be, because I think even Paul Heyman was like, hey, listen, that's not what these people are here for. They're here to watch Rob work with whoever he works with and get that stuff going. So incredible. A 10, absolutely 10 on that. So what did I give him? I gave him a 4. I'm sorry, I gave him a 7, a 4, and a 10. So he gets a 21. Out of 30, not fantastic, but that promo ability really hurts him. Really hurts him. But let's switch over to the Smart Tanks side of things. Let's see if he fares any better. I don't know, but let's check it. All right. Innovative effectiveness, scored from a 1 to 5. This was a character that a criteria that Donnie dreamed up. It's called innovative effectiveness, which is the ability to work as either a face or a heel, a good guy or a bad guy. And I think it's a great category because it's not one that people have. Oh, man, this is not going to do Rob any favors. Other than Bill Alfonso blowing that ridiculous whistle in your ear and making you just want to choke him, Rob Van Dam doesn't get a lot of heel heat. Why? Because he's just too laid back and cool. He's a more natural baby face. He's a more, I don't care, whatever. Matt Riddle probably patented a lot of stuff, more than other things, after Rob Van Dam's, in-ring career. So, yeah, oh man, innovative effectiveness. He's been a heel before, but he was a heel with the Alliance when they did that short-lived with WWE and WCW. And no one bought it, so he was naturally turned into a face. Ah, geez, he gets a 2. He gets a 2. I mean, he's a natural face. Like, it's hard to hate RVD. He doesn't have the promo skill to back it up, and he would need a mouthpiece. And you like watching him work, so why would you hate him? He gets a 2, unfortunately. Classic matches, classic rivalries, scored from 1 to 5. Good Lord. When we use the term highlight reel, go look up, if any of you haven't been privileged enough to watch a Jerry Lynn, Rob Van Dam match in your heyday or your life currently, if you're a younger fan. Go watch it. Go watch it right now and then come back to this. It is a unbelievable highlight reel. The spectacle that you're going to see, the catch as catch can, the reversals, the innovative, creative covers, the use of weapons and physical objects, the way things are done, and the crispness that it's done in. It's such a stellar thing to watch. Classic matches and rivalries. I mean, Jerry Lynn is his top, obviously. The mirror comparison I used. It would be like Sub-Zero versus Scorpion. It's just that kind of coolness. So, yeah, there we go. So Jerry Lynn, Then I would say Rhino. He had a good feud with Rhino. He had a decent feud with Taz. He had an amazing feud with Sabu. And then in WWE, he had, Jeff Hardy. He had Eddie Guerrero, Benoit, the name not to be mentioned, some Steve Austin stuff. He's had some really great stuff. I mean, Jericho. So, yeah, there's too many to match. I mean, he gets an automatic 5 in this category. You see where I'm going here? His body of work is so defined that it's hard to even knock it. Like, I can't even nitpick it. So it's a 5. He gets a 5 on that. Defining and redefining moments. This one's interesting. And I know we're kind of motoring through, but, this is an RVD day, 422, just off of 420. So defining, redefining moments, 1 to 5. Well, defining. I would have to say his ECW TV title run is his defining moment. The length of time he held it when people weren't holding titles for so long. He was the guy. He was, take on all comers, constantly defending it, not going, months without it, just always defending, always showing up, always delivering. That would be his moment. What should have been his moment is a shame. He should have been ECW champion long before he came to, Stamford. But another redefining moment was him versus John Cena. Oh, how could I forget that? That's a classic match that you guys got to go watch. John Cena and him is one of the most amazing matches from a crowd standpoint I've ever seen. It was so cool to watch John Cena go into literal enemy territory, like very uncomfortable enemy territory, and be just off his game, but still kind of win the crowd over by the end. The only thing that ever came close to the Cena and the Rob Van Dam is Cena versus CM Punk at Money in the Bank in 2011. It had the same feel. And go figure, Money in the Bank, Cena versus Punk, one of my all-time favorites. It's in my top 5. So Rob Van Dam and Cena's, it's up there too. It wouldn't crack the top 5, but it's in the top 20. Yeah, that's a defining moment. Unfortunately, another defining moment he has is he got stripped of the title for just being irresponsible. And at that time, the WWE did not have they did not have a clause in their wellness policy for recreational use of marijuana. So Rob Van Dam got stripped of it at the Canadian border because he was stupid. And it's a shame because of all these years, this is the flagship bearer. Rob Van Dam, for all intents and purposes, was the Sting of WCW, which is why I chose him. Because, yes, WCW is synonymous with Ric Flair, and ECW is probably synonymous with Taz. Those are the big guns. And then you got the Hogans and the people who all came in and integrated. But they're the flagship bearers for them. They were carrying that torch forever until the companies were run into the ground. So Rob Van Dam, he's had an interesting way of redefining moments. But what I also would say is he's also left a mark. I mean, in the description of this, it says the career-defining moments of a wrestler. It doesn't quite cover this because of Rob Van Dam and his persistency and the ability to just be comfortable in his own skin enough to say, I am this guy. Take me how I am. I do weed. I do smoke recreationally. It is my belief. And, I'm not hurting anybody, but this is who I am. I'm not trying to hide it. He unabashedly would come out and be like, yeah, I do it. And if you can't accept it, you can't accept it. I think him being so staunch in that paved the way for wrestlers today and people today to kind of be a little bit more understanding of addiction and things like that. Because Rob Van Dam, I wouldn't classify as an addict. I'd classify him as a choice. He made this choice. I don't think he was addicted. I think this was his belief. So he stood by it. And because of that, he's opened up lots of things and lots of gateways for people. And I think it's traveled and traversed a lot of sports because I live in Massachusetts and marijuana is considered legal under a certain amount. So those kinds of things, I think he kind of like paved the way on the road for that kind of stuff because he's a sports entertainer or a wrestler, but he was an athlete. And these things became more acceptable. You weren't just getting fired now all of a sudden. So he's worked in TNA. He's worked in other places. And He's always been him. Even when he did his Hall of Fame, he never apologized for who he was. And the fact that Rob Van Dam is in the Hall of Fame is something very special. So I think, you've got to say, a career from 1 to 5, I'd give it a 3.5. I'll be like Donnie. I'll split the difference. A 3.5. He's had some good. He's had some bad. He's a mixed bag. So now let's go. We went from innovative effectiveness as a 2 to a 5 to a 3.5. So a 2, 5, 7, 3.5, 10.5. He didn't score much different. He got an 11 on the other category and he got a, that's Rob Van Dam. He's a mixed bag, but he's one hell of an entertaining mixed bag. And one of my personal favorites. And like I said, if you get a chance, go watch him. Watch his classic matches in ECW. It's his best body of work. He's got some bangers in WWE, no doubt. But go watch the ECW stuff. You won't be disappointed. And hopefully, none of you were disappointed with this. My name's Joey Business. This has been the Smart Tank Essentials, and we'll catch you on the next one.